Joining me on this India Today special broadcast is Professor Brahma Chilani, former advisor to India's National Security Council. Yashovardhan Azad is former special director of the Intelligence Bureau. Ambassador Vivek Kajju joins us on this broadcast, as does Prabjot Singh, the former bureau chief of the Tribune from Toronto. And Prabjot Singh, can I begin by asking you, was this inevitable? It had to happen. The Globe and the Mail, of course, had a lead over others that Justin Trudeau would announce his resignation ahead of the Wednesday meeting.
Yeah, this was like he had no option left because there was a revolt from within the party. The ministers started resigning, and 30 of the caucus members, they said they are not going to contest the elections when the elections happen later this year. So it means he was losing within the party, he was losing out, and he was losing in parliament. Only saving grace for him had been the New Democrats, who supported him through 3 no-confidence motions. But then New Democrats also announced they will not support him anymore, and they will bring in a no-confidence motion. So he had lost from within the party, especially after his own deputy, the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland. She resigned a day before the Parliament adjourned for a winter break. And that too, when she was to present the fall financial statement. Hours before she was to present that statement, she quit. And that was shocking for him, though he had hinted to her a couple of days earlier he may change her portfolio or make her a special thing in to handle U.S.-Canada relations. But she thought Prime Minister had lost confidence in her, and she quit, and that set the ball rolling for Trudeau to move out of office. Yeah.
Professor Chilani, was Donald Trump winning elections in the United States the last straw that broke the camel's back as far as Justin Trudeau was concerned, given how openly he'd spoken against Donald Trump and compared Pierre Poilievre, his opponent, to Donald Trump in Canada?
Well, I think even before Trump has taken office, he has precipitated 2 crises, one in Canada and one in the UK. He has forced Trudeau to quit with his threat of imposing 25% tariffs on Canadian exports to the US. Canadian economy is heavily dependent on exports to the US. 80% of Canada's exports go to the US. So Trump's threat against Canada first forced the deputy premier to resign, and eventually led Trudeau to decide to quit after nearly a decade in office. And at the same time, largely through Elon Musk, Trump has also precipitated a political crisis in the UK over the issue of
the grooming
gangs grooming, trafficking, and raping young white girls. And all this is happening even before Trump has taken office. It goes to show that that Trump's return to power is going to have profound impacts globally, and this is just the beginning.
This is just the beginning. And Ambassador Kajju, there is a liberal meltdown in more ways than one, sir, literally and figuratively, globally.
Look, I don't subscribe to large theories, personally. I think the fact that Trudeau has gone, of course, to an extent, is because of the scrap, if I may say, with Trump. But more than that, there are internal reasons within the Canadian political system which has led to Trudeau's resignation. Let me put it this way. If Trudeau had popular support cutting within his own party, he could have rallied the country behind him.
Yes.
He would not have, the Canadians would have not allowed the American president to insult their prime minister and their country the way he did. the fact is that Trump got away with it because Trudeau himself was so weakened. So let us not imagine that a genuinely popular leader within any country would be forced to tumble over just because Trump decides that he must open a fusillade against that country. There is nationalism within states, and when nationalism comes to the fore with a popular leader leading that nationalist sentiment, then even a man like Trump has to bow down. It's not, can you imagine that Trump was to open a front against Prime Minister Modi? Would he succeed? So it is the internal weakness within the Canadian system in terms of for Trudeau, which has led to this day. So let us not exaggerate, with all due deference to our expert and for someone I have great respect, Mr. Chalani, but let's not exaggerate Trump's significance in bringing about regime change in various countries.
Okay, but two countries that we will specifically talk about that Professor Brahmachalani referred to, Canada and the United Kingdom. What's happening in the United Kingdom and the Pakistani grooming gangs, we'll talk about that in greater detail. But Terry Milsky, who's a senior Canadian journalist who joins us from Toronto. Sir, Donald Trump's, did he have a role to play, or his comments, did they have a role to play in Justin Trudeau putting in his papers, especially after the Deputy Prime Minister and the Finance Minister put in her papers?
I don't think that Trudeau made Trudeau made a big difference. I don't think that Trump made a big difference in the appearance now of Trudeau. I think that any Canadian Prime Minister would have had to respond to the first Trump presidency and the second one now upcoming in exactly the same way. They have to rally all sectors in Canada to first retaliate against perhaps carefully chosen industries which are pet projects of important Republicans, to include donors to Mr. Trump's campaign. This was a strategy that they did, in fact, successfully employ last time around in the first Trump presidency, where there were tariffs on steel, aluminum, and we retaliated against carefully chosen industries where the pain would be felt most acutely. And secondly, by doing what Canadians can to assure the United States, any United States administration, that we're taking care of problems at the border. We are closing the border to drugs and to illegal immigration, so forth. And so we've got, no doubt we're showing them a nice picture of a shiny new helicopter patrolling the border, so that we're dealing with the problem that you say you want us to deal with as a price of avoiding the 25% tariffs that Trump has threatened. Whether, in fact, that's what he was really after, who knows? We'll find out, I guess. But I don't think that Trudeau in particular, whether it's Trudeau handling it or Pierre Poilievre, the prospective conservative replacement, I don't think that it would make a big difference. Because any conservative prime minister who did not do the Trudeau administration was doing vis-a-vis Trump would be sorely criticized about it. They would be required by their voters, by their donors, to do the same thing.
Let me bring in Yashovardhan Azad also into this conversation. Justin Trudeau, he claimed to be a liberal but was seen as a supporter of Khalistani terrorists and in the garb of free speech. Now, countries like India were very clear. Even when Justin Trudeau visited India, the Narendra Modi government was very clear. A Khalistan terror supporter will not be really welcome in India politically, and the relationship was cold throughout. But right now, Justin Trudeau's resignation, with the NDP also withdrawing support, calling for a vote of no confidence, this was the end of the road for him, sir.
I'm not too sure whether the same policy will continue with the new government or not. The foreign affairs specialist would be able to clarify that. But I can tell you one thing, that in the last 9 or 10 years of Trudeau's reign, perhaps he brought the India-Canada relations at its worst. And the kind of things which have been happening, the retraction which came, that the Home Minister himself or the NSA are not involved in that of Niger affair, was something of quite an insult, I would say, to the administration itself, which had held wild accusations all over. And in fact, even after so much of inquiry, so much of investigation, nothing more has come out after the arrest of those 3 people. So I would definitely say, number one, that Mr. Trudeau was a lot to blame for this kind of deterioration in relationship. And I do hope there is some kind of a correction in Canada's thinking with the new government coming in.
Okay, Professor Chilani, you want to respond to what Ambassador Kaju was saying, that Donald Trump would not have been able to take on Trudeau or have this impact had Trudeau been popular within his country. He was hugely unpopular in his own country because of unemployment, rising prices, the housing crisis, and economy being in tailspin, sir.
There is no doubt that that Trudeau was deeply unpopular in Canada before Trump was elected, and that it was only a matter of time before Trudeau was forced out by the party. But Trump's threat of imposing 25% tariffs on Canadian exports to the US became a catalyst. It became a catalyst in precipitating matters in Canadian politics. It led to a series of developments. It led to the finance minister, who happens to be also the deputy prime minister, resign, and that in turn led to upheaval within the ruling Liberal Party. So Trump did precipitate matters in Canadian politics the way he's precipitating matters in British politics.
We are coming to the aspect of British politics in a short while from now, because the Pakistani grooming gangs, and did Britain as a society, as a country, as an administration, did Britain fail to protect their own children from these Pakistani grooming gangs? We'll talk about that in greater detail. But for the moment, Prabjot Singh, I want to stay on the issue of Justin Trudeau's resignation, since that's just been announced a short while back. What happens on Wednesday? What does the Liberal Party do? Who's likely to be the new Prime Minister of Canada? And there is some talk of snap polls. Or will elections be held in October 2025 itself?
You see, the recommendation by Trudeau for proroguing the House, that has been accepted by Governor General. That means the House doesn't meet till the 24th of March. But at the same time, within the Liberal Party, there was Trudeau was losing support quite in a big way. 30 of MPs, they said they won't be contesting elections again under Trudeau's leadership, and also some of the ministers, they also quit. So that put Trudeau in a very tight spot, and he had no choice left but to seek, at least he's got some reprieve for the Liberals to stay in power for till 24th of March, because till then there can't be any more no confidence motions. They already were the three no confidence motions, and now the choice will be between Chrystia Freeland and Trudeau's choice, maybe Dominic LeBlanc, the new finance minister. So it could be anything, because earlier the former governor Mark Carney was being projected as a possible induction in the cabinet, but he refused to join the cabinet. So now the choice will be, because some of the MPs, the caucus, Liberal caucus, are throwing their weight behind Chrystia Freeland, the deputy prime minister who resigned, and after resigning, she didn't say a word. She's just watching the situation, and she is most probably she'll be the interim prime minister, or while Trudeau wants Dominic LeBlanc. Yeah.
Okay. Terry Milski, is that also your assessment, sir, that the former finance minister and the former deputy prime minister could be the next Liberal Party leader and carry the standard to the October 2025 elections? Or can there be elections even earlier?
I think it's a plausible theory because if you look at the polls, and I looked at another one just recently over the weekend, which makes Chrystia Freeland the leading candidate to replace Trudeau. I think it's a believable poll, although she is only a very few points, only maybe 5 points ahead of Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of Canada and the governor of the Bank of England. So he's a very well-known economist, although he's not got any experience really in politics. Mark Carney is perhaps number two. He could become number one. It'll be a competitive race between those two, and there'll be several other candidates. If I may just comment on one other point that was made a moment ago about the difference that might develop as a result of a better relationship between Canada and India over the Khalistan issue, I'm concerned that Indians may get a little too enthusiastic about that, because there are certain things that won't change because the people change. First, there's a new Conservative Prime Minister state, according to the polls. Anyway. Let's say that would happen. There is nothing that in Canada a new Prime Minister can do. Say to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and to the courts, to stop those trials of the 30 suspects that have been named by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, not a political organization, as having been involved in extortion and murder on Canadian soil as a means of tracking, intimidating, and pressuring the Khalistani suspects in Canada. Those trials will proceed. Those trials may produce extremely damaging information to the Indian diplomats' reputation, even if they're not in court. 6 of them were kicked out of the country and accused of being persons of interest, including the High Commissioner himself. And the RCMP wasn't looking all that up. They've got no axe to grind that they're trying to make up charges. No. We have been doing a very long and very detailed investigation of the murder of Hardeep Singh Najjar. They have, as you well know, made public those accusations, and also a whole crime wave of coercion, extortion, and murder. And those charges are not just going to disappear because the government changes. It's an independent police, and the courts are independent. And beware
they
of what
would
may
still
come
need to
in those
they
trials.
will still need to produce evidence, and so far we haven't seen any evidence in public domain, at least, that would stand scrutiny in a court of law, perhaps. And let me take that both to Ambassador Karju and to Yashowardhan Azad, both who've dealt with these cases personally at a diplomatic level and at a police level. But to you, Ambassador Karju, do you agree with Terry Milski that even if there's a change as Prime Minister and change of government, whether the Conservatives come in instead of Liberals, Canada-India relations, point one, and point two, especially on the issue of Khalistan, may still remain a sore point between the two countries, especially the investigation?
Well, on Khalistan, I think the Canadian political class with varying degrees needs to become more sensitive to Indian concerns.
Yes.
That is a general proposition. As far as criminal cases is concerned, I have great respect for my friend Terry. But my own diplomatic experience has shown that all these protestations of independence of judiciary and police being independent of and immune of political influence is more theoretical than practical. This is especially when it comes to matters relating to external policy and interstate relations. So, yes, in theory, what Terry is saying is perfectly fine, but a little nudge here and a little nudge there to the Chief of Police from the Prime Minister's office in all countries, including Canada, works wonders. My friend Mr. Azad may differ from me, but this is the
Okay.
reality. This is what I have personally experienced in my diplomatic career, that all these countries which say that our judiciary is independent, our police is independent, when push comes to shove, when their national interests get involved, then they all find ways of navigating their systems to meet the required ends of their interests and find ways of dealing with things.
Is that also your assessment, Mr. Yashovardhan Azad? As far as Canada-India relations are concerned, a lot depends on one, Canada's action against Khalistanis, which is a big zero. And as far as Canada says, 6 of our diplomats, including the High Commissioner, they are persons of interest. Now, that case will remain, and that will remain a sore point between the two countries.
Well, let me say this, that even if the Conservative government comes after this and they have the same policy, let's go back to the Kanishka crash. Since then, our relations have never been hunky-dory. And since then, if you see, there has been a gradual decline, a gradual slide. The issues are remaining the same. And let me bring another aspect of this, which is very, very troublesome for India, is that despite one of the police commissioners, and I heard and I said it in the last TV debate we had, in which Terry was also there, in which he said that there are extortions being committed by the relatives, by the Khalistani agents in Canada against those people whose relatives are in Punjab. So there is a kind of relations which have been established clearly between the crimes happening in Punjab and being directed from Canada. They also persist. So if the NIA has given a mountain of dossiers over there for extradition, this point will carry on between the Conservative government and our government. And so the relations would be the same. It depends if they try to acquire a fresh approach diplomatically, then things will be different, to overlook these things. Otherwise, I'm sure things would remain the same.
Because Terry Milski, you've written extensively about this. There was intelligence input available with the RCMP about the Khalistani plot to blow up Air India aircraft Kanishk. 320 people were killed. The police did little. The investigations were very sorry. So that really doesn't paint the Royal Canadian Mounted Police or the judiciary in Canada or the political leadership in very good light, sir.
You're absolutely right. And I personally believe that the feeble, to put it mildly, response of the Canadian establishment to include the court system, the justice system, and the Royal Canadian Police and the federal scene and the local police all across the country, an absolute national disgrace. It was quite astonishingly feeble. Clear warnings were ignored, evidence was destroyed, witnesses were allowed to be intimidated and ultimately without the state doing much, if anything, about it. This is certainly a disgrace in my view. However, what I'm saying is that in the present situation, that's all a given, as far as I'm concerned. That Canada totally dropped the ball on Khalistan, and to this day indulges Khalistani propaganda, letting them glorify their martyrs, gun-toting terrorists of all kinds, to include the assassins of Indira Gandhi, the mastermind of the Air India bombing, etc., etc. Given all of that history, there is a scope for Canada, a new prime minister, to say to his counterpart in India that, look, we're going to take a harder line on this propaganda. We're not going to allow the glorification of terrorism. We're going to have new legislation. We're going to make that illegal. That would make a difference. That would be a step forward that Canada definitely should take. However, all I'm saying to you is that Vivek, I respect his point of view. Yes, it's not unheard of, even in pristine, innocent Canada, that a politician may administer a little nudge and a wink, as he puts it, toward chief of police and so forth. It's not going to be a nudge and the wink. Is not going to get rid of 30 different charges of extortion and murder. Sorry, there are
Fair
8
enough.
different murder suspects. There is going to be evidence you don't want to see come out in those trials, even if half of them were somehow swept away by some diplomatic nudge and a wink. The other half would be devastating. The RCMP is not a political organization. I'm sorry if this sounds like a poly. We may have
But
failed dismally in the past with respect to Air India, but on this file, remember, they brought it to the politicians, not the other way around. It was
the
the police who
RCMP
took to the
continues to
politicians.
fail. The RCMP, with due respect, and I want to bring in Prabjot Singh into this conversation, RCMP continues to fail till date. The fact that you have extortionists roaming around in Canada, plotting murders in Punjab, India submitting dossiers to Canada, the esteemed RCMP is taking no action against the extortionists. They're taking no action against the rapists and murderers and human traffickers in Canada. They're taking absolutely no action against terrorists in Canada. It just shows the RCMP in very, very poor light. And in today's day and age, sir, in a transparent world, the world sees it all. Like we are looking at the British police, how the British system failed their children. The RCMP has failed Canada, Prabjot Singh, haven't they, in ensuring that the Khalistani terrorists are dealt with in Canada, given all the dossiers that India submitted?
Yes, you have a point. You see, the Canadian system doesn't work the way like we think it works. They need evidence. They have the rights, the human rights, and all those things which are attached to. Because though we have an extradition treaty signed with India, Canada, and India, but not many extraditions have taken place. Though
No,
on
but
both
that's because
sides,
Canada gives that fig leaf that India does not accept the Commonwealth, the Queen as head of Commonwealth, and that is why they refuse to extradite the accused in Air India, sir. No, but Canada is also part of the same Commonwealth. Their laws are the same, and there are lawyers in India who read Canadian law. So, I want to bring in just the last 30 seconds I have on this part of the show. I want to bring in Ambassador Karju. Canada has to be as transparent as any other country. It cannot claim to be the white man who knows better law than the brown man. It doesn't work in 21st century world.
I think the Canadians should apply the law equally. They have to take Indian complaints about crime being ordered from Canada very seriously. When it comes to matters, say like the Niger assassination or the Niger murder, they have the thought in my mind recurringly has been that they have people in their custody. I think they have 4 Indians in their custody, but no case has proceeded against them in a court of law. And for these many months, what have they been waiting for? They've made allegations against senior Indian political personalities. They've made Trudeau's personal aides holding high office in Canada confirmed these allegations. Yet no criminal cases have proceeded. So that brings about doubts, and that brings about a certain sense that the Canadians have been adventurous. They've made claims which they've not been able to back till now.
Okay, clearly this debate continues. Today, the debate does remain on Justin Trudeau's decision to step down. Is he perhaps one of the most unpopular leaders right now in Canada, if not the most unpopular? We'll track that story closely.